Usually when we talk about a high-stakes football match, we just kind of picture this beautiful, flowing game of chess.
Right, yeah, like one team dictates the tempo, they hold the ball.
Exactly. The other team adapts, and possession really does all the talking. But, and this is what's so fascinating, when you look at the upcoming 2026 World Cup Group G clash between Egypt and Iran on June 26 in Seattle, that chessboard is just completely flipped upside down.
Oh, totally. It's a bizarre tactical landscape.
Yeah, we are looking at a scenario where both of these teams have basically built their entire modern identities around, well, absolutely refusing to have the ball.
It's the ultimate tactical standoff, honestly. You've got these two incredibly stubborn, immovable objects that somehow both want to play entirely on the counterattack.
Which makes no sense on paper.
Right, not at all. Somebody has to take the initiative eventually, but, I mean, neither system is actually built for it.
Right. Well, welcome to this deep dive, everyone. We've got a massive stack of scouting reports, tactical analytics, and honestly, some pretty heavy geopolitical news in front of us today. Our mission is to figure out how these two completely opposite footballing philosophies are going to survive this collision in the Pacific Northwest.
It's going to be wild.
It really is. But hey, before we get into the actual mechanics of this match,
Yeah.
we want to warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel. We hope for 1 million subscribers.
Yes, definitely.
And to everyone already with us, thank you. You are the foundation of our success and continuity. So let's set the stage for Group G here.
Yeah, setting the stage is crucial. So Belgium is heavily favored to win this group, right? Which means this specific match in Seattle is effectively a playoff for second place.
A direct ticket to the knockout rounds.
Exactly. And both of these teams had incredibly dominant qualification paths to get here. But the way they play, the way they're constructed, and, the extreme off-pitch pressures they're carrying into this tournament, they couldn't be more different.
Let's start by unpacking Egypt's blueprint. Because the very first thing that jumps out in these squad breakdowns is just the roster makeup itself.
Oh, the local core.
Yeah. A lot of modern national teams, especially in Africa, rely really heavily on diaspora players, guys born and trained in European academies who declare for their parents' homeland.
Right, it's super common.
But Coach Hossam Hassan proudly champions this, what he calls a 100% locally made core. He is leaning almost entirely on players from the domestic Egyptian giants, Al Ahly and Zamalek.
He is aggressively pushing back against that prevailing trend. Like, out of his 26-man roster, only a handful are actually playing abroad.
Which is wild for a World Cup team.
It is. The rest are battle-tested together in the Egyptian Premier League and the CF Champions League, and honestly, this gives him a massive structural advantage.
I see it kind of like a specialized heist crew.
A heist crew. I like that.
Yeah, think about it. If you pull together a supergroup of all-star soloists from all over Europe, they might be brilliant individually, but they need weeks to learn how to communicate.
Right, they don't have the reps together.
Exactly. But because Egypt's core trains, travels, and competes together year-round at the club level, they don't even need to look up to know where a teammate is running.
Yeah, they have this built-in, almost telepathic cohesion, and in transition, that saves crucial milliseconds.
Which brings us to the tactics. How does that telepathy translate to the pitch?
Well, that telepathy is really the bedrock of Hossam Hassan's pragmatic approach. Egypt operates primarily in a highly disciplined 4-2-3-1, or sometimes a 4-3-3 formation on paper.
Right.
But what makes them dangerous is how seamlessly that shifts into a 3-5-2 or even a 3-4-1-2 against really strong defensive blocks.
Oh, let's break that down to the listener. Because when you hear about a 4-2-3-1 shifting to a 3-5-2 on the fly, what is actually happening physically on the pitch?
Okay, so think of it like an accordion. When Egypt loses the ball, one of the defensive midfielders instantly drops back to slot right between the two center backs.
Oh, so creating a back three immediately.
Exactly. And simultaneously, the wingers drop deep to cover the flanks, turning that 3 into a back 5. But here's the key. They don't press high up the pitch near the opponent's penalty box.
They drop into a mid-block instead.
Right. Imagine a tight, rectangular net sitting exactly on the halfway line. They just stay compact, refuse to leave that net, and physically force their opponents to pass out wide toward the sidelines.
Effectively choking off the most dangerous part of the pitch, the center.
You got it. It's frustrating to play against.
Well, wait, I have to push back here because I'm looking at their qualification stats. They went undefeated, keeping 7 clean sheets.
Which is incredible.
It is, and it makes sense if they parked the bus, right?
Yeah.
But they also scored 19 goals in 10 matches.
Yeah, the math feels weird there.
Exactly. If their entire identity is sitting in a mid-block and refusing possession, How on earth are they racking up that many goals?
Hmm.
You can't score 19 times without ever holding the ball.
So the secret is entirely in the mechanics of their midfield double pivot. Usually that's Marwan Attia and Hamdi Fathi. These two guys are designed strictly for ball recovery and rapid, violent vertical distribution. Like, they despise sustained possession.
They don't want to play tiki-taka.
Not at all. They don't want to pass the ball sideways 40 times to build an attack. When Attia intercepts a pass in that mid-block, his first thought is immediate vertical progression.
So the concept is to exploit the empty spaces in the opponent's midfield the exact millisecond after possession changes hands.
Precisely. They want to catch the opposing fullbacks while they're still jogging forward before they can reset their defensive lines.
Which brings us to the absolute tip of that spear. Mohamed Salah.
The legend himself.
I mean, he's 34 years old now, and this is widely viewed as his final World Cup push. And in Hossam Hassan's system, he isn't just a traditional winger, right?
No, he operates with total freedom. He drifts from the right flank straight into the central half spaces.
And for those visualizing the pitch, the half space is that really dangerous, awkward corridor right between the wing and the center circle.
It is a total nightmare for a defense to track, because the center back doesn't want to step out and leave the middle exposed, but the fullback is too busy watching the touchline.
And Salah just lives in that blind spot.
He thrives there.
Yeah.
And the historical weight on Salah's shoulders right now is just immense. I mean, he sits at 67 international goals.
Right.
He needs just 2 more to tie Coach Hassan's all-time national scoring record of 69 goals.
Oh, wow. That's wild. You have the current captain trying to dethrone his own manager's record on the biggest stage imaginable.
Yeah, and playing in a system entirely built to feed him the ball in transition.
That is an incredible locker room dynamic. But, and let's look at this logically, if I'm the opposing manager and I know Egypt despises possession, and I know Salah is the entire engine of the counterattack, why wouldn't I just put 3 defenders on Salah every single time he touches the ball? Just smother him and make the rest of the team try to beat me.
That's the obvious counter,
Right.
But Hossam Hassan anticipated exactly that, which is why he integrated a really smart strategic counterweight Ibrahim Adel. The young spark.
Right. He's a 25-year-old forward playing for FC Nordsjælland in Denmark. And Adele is not your traditional touchline hugging winger who just crosses the ball.
He's more aggressive than that.
Much more. He attacks the back post aggressively, he finds those same half spaces on the opposite side, and crucially, he presses the opponent's defense with a ferocity that you just rarely see in a team that prefers a mid-block.
Okay, so he's basically the insurance policy.
Exactly.
If you commit 3 men to Salah on the right, you leave Adel completely isolated on the left. And he has the technical ability to carry the ball 40 yards into the final third completely independently.
Yeah, it ensures Egypt isn't just a one-trick pony relying entirely on their right flank. He forces the defense to stay honest.
You try to suffocate Salah, Adel will punish you on the weak side.
That's the plan.
But wait, if Egypt's entire strategy relies on exploiting the space left behind by an aggressive opponent, what happens when they run into a team that absolutely refuses to leave their own penalty box? That is the million-dollar question.
Right. And before we answer that and dive into Iran's fortress, I want to take a quick second to raise the stakes for you, our listeners. We hope for 1 million subscribers.
We really do.
You are the foundation of our success and continuity. And to celebrate this community, we are running a special contest this month. We want you to help spread the channel, and doing so activates a prize for the viewer with the highest percentage of correct match predictions this month.
It's a huge prize, too.
It is. The prize is literally half of the channel's profits. Now, just to be crystal clear, we are not a betting platform. The prize money comes directly from the channel's own revenue, not from the contestants. It's simply our way of saying thank you for the support.
So get your predictions in.
Exactly. All right, bring it back to the pitch.
Right.
If we want to understand whether Egypt's explosive counterattack will actually work, we have to look at the exact wall they're trying to break down on June 26.
Team Melli.
Iran.
Yeah. Amir Ghalenoei's side is built on this just comprehensive, suffocating structure. Suffocating is the perfect word for it. They utilize a 4-2-3-1 that shifts into an incredibly rigid 5-4-1 or 4-4-2 out of possession.
And if you thought Egypt's mid-block was tight, Iran's low block is genuinely terrifying.
They are the absolute masters of what tactical analysts call defensive collective sacrifice.
Okay, let's define defensive collective sacrifice for the listener, because it sounds intense.
It really is. It essentially means that your star offensive players, your wingers and forwards, are expected to sprint 60 yards backward to tackle a fullback if the shape demands it.
So literally nobody is above defending.
Nobody. It requires an unbelievable level of fitness and discipline. I mean, in their 10 AFC qualifiers, they conceded just 4 goals.
Just 4 goals in 10 games. That's a brick wall.
It is. They don't care about possession metrics. They don't care if you pass the ball around the perimeter for 80 minutes. They only care about denying you the physical space inside the penalty box.
Right, but offensively, Iran has suffered a massive shock to the system recently. Sardar Azmoun, their veteran forward with 57 international goals, he was shockingly omitted from the squad.
Yeah, that was a huge curveball.
Suddenly, almost all of Iran's attacking hopes, especially from set pieces, rest on the shoulders of just one man, Mehdi Taremi, the Olympiacos striker.
Taremi is operating as the lone star up top right now. And when you play a low block, the striker has arguably the hardest job on the entire pitch.
Because he's so isolated.
Exactly. When the defense finally clears the ball, he is totally alone against 3 opposing center backs. His hold-up play just has to be world-class.
It's almost about physics and skeletal alignment at that point, isn't it?
Yes, he literally has to lower his center of gravity, use his body as a massive shield to protect the ball, and just absorb heavy tackles to buy the 3 or 4 seconds his midfielders need to sprint 40 yards up the pitch to support him.
Wow. So without Azmoun to share that load, Taremi carries a monumental burden. He has to be the target man, the link-up player, and the primary finisher all at once.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
So looking at this decisive clash in Seattle, we have Egypt's explosive verticality going head-to-head against Iran's disciplined low block. But looking at the data, I noticed something interesting. Iran's backline is actually one of the oldest in the entire tournament.
It is, yeah. They have a lot of miles on those legs.
I have to imagine that age creates a massive vulnerability against the sheer speed of someone like Omar Marmoush, who, by the way, is now valued at 50 million euros, and Salah on the counter. Like, if Iran's defenders step even 2 yards out of position, they don't have the legs to recover.
That lack of recovery pace is absolutely their glaring weakness. An older defense relies entirely on positioning and anticipation.
Because if Marmoush gets behind them, the foot race is already over.
It's done. So the entire battleground for this matchup will be the engine room, the center of the pitch. You're going to have Egypt's Marmoush trying to navigate through Iran's really dense central screen, which is anchored by Saeed Azatolahi and Saman Ghoddos.
This is the tactical fulcrum of the entire game. Because neither team wants the ball, whoever is forced to hold possession in midfield is actually at a disadvantage.
Right. It all comes down to who executes better in the transition. Consider the mechanics of it. If Iran's midfielders, Azatolahi and Ghoddos, can successfully crowd Marmoush out the second he touches the ball.
Then they dominate the rhythm.
Exactly. They can slow the game down to a crawl and totally isolate Egypt's wingers. But, and this is a big but, if Marmoush can receive the ball on the half turn.
Meaning he takes his first touch while already pivoting his body to face Iran's goal.
Yes. If he does that, he breaks that very first line of Iranian pressure instantly.
Oh man, and suddenly he is running at full speed at an aging defensive line with Salah peeling off to his right.
And if that happens, Iran's fortress just completely crumbles.
Tactics are one thing, but we have to talk about the psychological weight these players are carrying. Let's start with the Egyptian fans, because the supporters are absolutely desperate.
They are craving a historic, first-ever World Cup win and progression past the group stage.
The expectations in Cairo are just astronomical. But the reality of actually supporting the team in North America is pretty brutal.
The economic barrier is immense for them.
It really is. When you look at the numbers, U.S. visa fees are around $185. But the minimum wage in Egypt is roughly $132 a month.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
Right. So the domestic superfans, the absolute heart and soul of the fan base, are mostly watching from home or in local cafes. Inside the stadiums in the U.S., the vocal support will largely fall to wealthy expats and the diaspora community.
And that fundamentally changes the atmosphere for the players on the pitch.
It has to, right?
Oh, definitely. And Hossam Hassan is acutely aware of this pressure. His managerial style is fascinating because he manages the immense weight on his squad through fierce nationalism and deliberate deflection.
He creates a sort of us versus the world mentality.
Exactly. When things go wrong, he deflects the media sheet entirely onto external factors. I mean, he famously blamed a recent loss on mosquito-infested hotels rather than his own tactical failures.
Which sounds completely absurd to the press.
Right. But to his players, he's acting as a human shield. He's absorbing all that criticism so they can just focus on the pitch.
Well, if Egypt has pressure, Iran is dealing with an entirely different stratosphere of external hurdles. And before we get into this next part, we want to explicitly state to you, the listener, that we are impartially reporting the facts gathered from the provided news sources.
Yes, that's an important note.
We do not take sides, nor do we endorse any political viewpoints regarding these events. Our goal is simply to convey the stark logistical realities these athletes are facing on the ground.
And the logistical nightmare leading into this tournament for Iran is just unprecedented. Due to intense geopolitical tensions and strict U.S. visa policies, Iranian fans traveling from home are essentially barred from attending.
Wow. And it's not just the fans, right?
No, furthermore, portions of the Iranian coaching and administrative staff were denied visas outright.
I read that the team couldn't even set up a normal base camp in the host country. They originally planned to be in Tucson, Arizona, but had to move their entire training base across the border to Tijuana, Mexico.
Yeah, and according to the reports, they are only allowed to cross into the United States on actual match days.
Just think about the physical toll of that. Imagine being an elite athlete whose body is meticulously calibrated for peak performance.
Right. Every stretch, every meal is planned.
Exactly. Now add sitting in a climate-controlled bus for hours at an international border checkpoint, dealing with customs agents and security protocols on the actual morning of a World Cup match.
It is an exhausting, draining way to prepare for the biggest games of your life. Muscle stiffness alone from that bus ride could cost you the game.
And then when they finally do get onto the pitch, the atmosphere is incredibly fraught. They face massive protests from their own diaspora fans in the stands waving pre-revolutionary flags.
The political tension inside the stadium will just be palpable. And that tension recently collided with the local Seattle organizing committee over the Pride Match designation.
Oh, right. I saw this in the reports. What happened there?
Well, the Seattle local committee designated this specific June 26 match as a Pride match to coincide with local city celebrations. But both the Egyptian and Iranian football associations officially and vehemently rejected this branding.
Citing clashes with their own cultural and religious values.
Exactly. Both FAs sent formal letters of protest. It has created this intense, unavoidable cultural friction surrounding the game before a single ball is even kicked.
It's a staggering amount of noise for 22 men on a pitch to tune out. You have the weight of history, extreme logistical nightmares, cross-border travel on match days, aging squads, tactical standoffs, and the hopes of millions riding on every single pass.
Which brings us back to the ultimate tactical paradox we started with.
Right. Both Egypt and Iran have built their entire footballing identities around absorbing immense pressure and hitting on the counterattack. So what happens when two counterattacking teams face each other and literally neither side wants to have possession?
It's a massive game of chicken. Who blinks first?
Right.
I mean, if Iran sits back in their 5-4-1, does Egypt's Marwan Attia step up and try to dictate play, thereby exposing his own defense to Taremi?
Or if Egypt sits in their mid-block, does Taremi drop deep to demand the ball, leaving Iran with absolutely no focal point up top?
Exactly. The team that wins this match won't necessarily be the team with the best plan A, but the team that manages to execute their plan B without falling apart.
An unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, but neither wants to make the first move. You know, this whole situation, especially Iran's base camp in Mexico, makes me wonder about the long-term ripple effects of this tournament.
How so?
Well, if you have a team forced to endure international border crossings on the morning of a match just to play, you have to imagine this completely changes how FIFA evaluates multi-nation, continent-spanning host bids in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
We might see strict visa guarantees become a mandatory part of the bidding criteria, just to prevent this exact logistical nightmare from happening again.
The off-pitch logistics are pushing the boundaries just as much as the on-pitch tactics. It's going to be a defining moment for international football operations moving forward.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the tactics, the tension, and the incredible stakes of Egypt versus Iran.
It's been a great breakdown.
It really has. And before we go, for the third and final time, we hope for 1 million subscribers.
Make sure to hit that button.
You are the foundation of our success and continuity. We couldn't do this without you. As we look toward June 26 in Seattle, ask yourself, when the pressure is at its absolute highest and the world is watching, who will be brave enough to hold the ball when everything in their DNA tells them to give it away? We'll see you next time.